Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And this week I'm talking with Angela, whose story starts with years of relying on sugar to cope with anxiety, stress, and a busy life, until her body reached a breaking point. And in this episode, Angela shares how she discovered mindfulness, which is really paying attention to what's happening right now in your body, your thoughts, and your surroundings instead of running on autopilot. So we talk about how that kind of awareness, especially through mindful eating, can help you notice cravings, sit with them, and respond differently without reaching for sugar automatically. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at aftersugarclub.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at aftersugarclub.com. And also, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at MyLifeAfterSugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. All right, let's get to my chat with Angela. So today I'm with Angela. And Angela, can you just tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up, especially in relation to food and sugar?
So I grew up in Saskatoon, which is in Canada, and my household, I would say, relationship to food was at 5 o'clock at night. Our dinner was supposed to be on the table, and there was always a fight. So if the salt and pepper weren't on the table, there was a big fight. So there's always a lot of tension around that. And so for me, meal times were very stressful. And I didn't realize that until later on in life. So my, early 20s was, I would say, when my sugar addiction was like rampant. I would basically just eat sugar. I didn't really eat much else for food. I was very active, but it was something, I struggled with a lot of anxiety and depression. And so for me, getting that hit of the sugar was really just something that I did. And back then, like, we weren't taught that you needed, in fact, you were told fat was bad and sugar was okay. So that was really how I kind of grew up believing that it was all right. And it wasn't, I didn't correlate it with my anxiety and the depression that I was experiencing or any of the mental health issues. I had quite a lot of eating disorders. So sugar fit right into all of that kind of disordered eating that I struggled with.
And so when did you figure out that A, fat isn't that bad, or depending on what type of fat, and that B, maybe sugar was at the root of some of your issues?
Well, for me, I didn't figure it out. I would say that my body ended up telling me that it wasn't working anymore. So I was just compensating. You know how you get into life where it's like very busy. I was a mom of two kids and working in a corporate world and going all the time. And so to tell you how bad my sugar was, I would like get in my car in the morning and I would have like a package of nibs, which is that kind of licorice or whatever gummies, and I would be eating those. And at my office job, I'd pull out my drawer and I'd have like all the sugar, and that was kind of how I lived. That and caffeine. So I again still active, so I was still in some ways kind of burning out with it, but that type of diet without any fat or anything, by the time I hit, I think it was about 38, I absolutely completely crashed. So at that time, there wasn't anything to do with mindfulness and sugar or addictions. In fact, like there really wasn't anything on the internet about like meditation wasn't a thing. This is really new and great. It's awesome that it's out in the world now. But back then, I came across so I was really sick. Like I mean, when I say crash, I couldn't work anymore. I was very, and I was a sole provider of my family. So it was a very severe issue. I basically lost my job, and I had to fix it, or like I wasn't going in the right direction at all. Like I couldn't get up, I couldn't walk upstairs. My body has, in hindsight, now I know what I know. I would call that kind of late stage, like adrenal failure. So
Mm-hmm.
again, just hitting an extreme wall, and I came across a book called Full Catastrophe Living. And I was like, that's me. Like that sort of sounded like my life. And it was by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. And there was like one video of him doing this talk on mindfulness to Google. And I was fascinated by it. I was listening to him, and I had never, ever considered that I could even question my thoughts, or I had any type of like conscious control. I just was like I struggled with anxiety and depression since I was about 13. So I didn't have any understanding that you could not have a life with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it piqued my curiosity enough to, I ended up going onto a mountain with him and training with him with all these corporate people or like healthcare people there. And it was like, again, that first time where I realized that there was more to like what I thought were just problems that I couldn't handle. Like sugar addiction is very severe. Like you don't feel like you have control of it. And when
Absolutely.
you have a anxiety and depression, you don't feel like you have control of it. Like it feels like it's just happening to you. And with the practices through the mindfulness-based stress reduction, like he basically sat there and he told us all of these like amazing, their story, basically how they started doing this and bringing mindfulness to North America was one where they were in the basement of a hospital and all of these really chronic people that the hospital couldn't fix. They had nothing left for them. They didn't know what they could do. They would just send them down to the basement to do whatever that thing is that they're doing down there, right?
Whoa.
And they were doing all of these research projects with mindfulness. And what Dr. John Kabat-Zinn had come up with was an 8-week program. That's all it was 8 weeks. And he would take people who were like, left for dead, and to 8 weeks later, feeling really amazing and good.
Wow.
Or not, I wouldn't say amazing and good, but they had significant, like you could have someone who had severe cirrhosis and whatever, psoriasis, and they would have like 8 weeks later, it would be down 60%, or like the anxiety would be gone. So I was sold. I was like, if that can happen to those people, I commit. Like I had, like, again, I had lost my job. I was on a severe healing journey, and there was no other solutions out there. So I did all of those practices. And what evolved from that was realizing how much addictions are such an unconscious part of our life, all of
Mm-hmm.
us, every single
Mm-hmm.
one. So whether it's sugar or it's caffeine or, and anything that we do that kind of distracts us from our emotions, and I didn't know how to feel emotions. I had been living a life where I was in anxiety and depression, and I had no capacity to feel an emotion. So essentially, the practice of mindfulness is like being able to be very present with what you are feeling,
Yeah.
aware of it, and conscious. And it takes a lot of practice when you haven't been feeling feelings to be able to do that. So, it's not something that I would say immediately stopped, my sugar addiction or immediately stopped the anxiety or any of that. But what I will say is that it changed the capacity for me to make those changes. So over time, I no longer have sugar addictions. I no longer have anxiety. I don't experience any of that. I experienced anxiety for 30 years and I did not know a life outside of it. And so I went on for, I would say, 15 years teaching
Yeah.
mindfulness and meditation and helping people with anxiety and depression and so on. Um, and I loved it. It was amazing. So I did a bit of a shorter program because 8 weeks was a bit long, and the MBSR program is very intense. They want you to be meditating in the morning and meditating at night, and most people don't have that in their day. But what I will say is that essentially mindfulness doesn't take any time. It's you in your day, and you can rewire like the brain that is already going into those unconscious habits. And so even though I did this shorter type of program with groups for about 6 weeks, it was fascinating to me how every single person, how they went in, they came out with completely different habits. And they weren't doing like big meditations. They weren't doing they were just doing practices consistently each week. And we did these together for an hour, and then they went off in their day and so on. So I was just fascinated how we can have this capacity. Like, as I mean, way back then, we were told that our brains wouldn't actually change. I mean, they were kind of stuck by the time we were 5. And now we know
Hmm.
that that's not true.
Hmm.
We know that they're very plastic and that we have more than a capacity to change that. And so for me and for, all of the participants that I had, you're coming in, especially from a place of like addiction, you're coming in from a place where you're wanting freedom in your life,
Hmm.
rather than being like driven by these unconscious acts and so on. So, yeah, so
Wow.
that's my path with mindfulness.
That's amazing. That's amazing because, I mean, I've done all my life, I've done yoga and
Yeah,
a little bit of meditation, and it's like it's really difficult to underestimate. Most people underestimate the power of mindfulness. And in that sense, we don't even give it a second thought, no pun intended, about how we can use that for
oh, I think
anxiety,
you were just frozen there for a moment. But
about how,
they, yeah.
yeah, it's just because we underestimate how much how powerful this tool is, and we go straight to the meds.
Absolutely. I know. I struggle with it because I mean my son's 28 and he's got all these friends and almost all of them except for him are on meds and unfortunately they don't really know these tools. However, the I believe that, meds won't be something that will make that change for them, and they will eventually find this path because it is available and accessible for all of us. I think the challenge is though is that it seems too simple and it seems too easy and it's free, so we don't have any investment in it. And it has to be a practice. So I'll share with you. When I crashed, I got diagnosed as bipolar. And that was legitimate. Like I used to, with the sugar cravings, I would go high on a manic and I would crash down into some pretty low, very lows. So sugar is very destructive to life. And I believe that even though I did the meditation the way they were taught in the MBSR, which was an hour in the morning and an hour before I went to bed,
Yeah.
I did that. I believe that the most powerful tool that I had to absolutely rewire my brain was the most basic, and it was the stuff that was in my day to day. And I'm going to explain exactly what that is. Because I was a single mom with 2 kids at that time. So I
Yeah.
didn't have like little ones. Like, I mean, I didn't have like all this time in the world to do all this whatever meditation and stuff. But here's what I did do. I used every single moment that are these daily habits that we all do. So think about that. That's like brushing your teeth, right?
Yeah,
Everybody does that in the morning.
sure.
We get in the shower, okay? These unconscious things that we do that we don't think about. And then maybe we go and we eat something for breakfast, and then we get in our car and drive. And so just think about driving in the car. This is what everybody does. If you're going to work and you've done it like hundreds of times, you get in and you get there and you don't even remember how you got there,
Yeah,
right? Like you
exactly.
go from point A to point B and it's like, "Oh, I'm here." I don't even remember because we're constantly thinking in our minds. So we have all of these touch points in the day that we do this complete automatic, like just living. And that's natural. I mean, our brain is sort of wired to do that, like to do that. But that is the most powerful way, in my opinion, to rewire your brain. And it takes, you're already doing it. It takes no extra time. And what you're doing, so let's just talk about like going in the shower, right? You
Yeah,
go into the shower, you actually feel the water on your skin. You smell the shampoo that you have. You're feeling the sensations of the warmth or the cold or the bubbles or whatever it is, and you're present. So again, we get in, we do our thing most of the time. When we get out, we're not even thinking about it. We're doing these so unconsciously. But when we actually stop and pause and we become very present, so think about what is mindfulness? It's being very present in the moment. It's being attention to what we're sensing, like using all of our senses, our smell, our taste, our touch, the cold around us, whatever that is. We're just bringing our attention to that moment. It actually drops you in to a place where your body is in that relaxed, I would say not even relaxed state, but just that very deep presence because you're so immersed in that moment. And that can be with brushing your teeth. That could be with especially eating your food. The groups that I did, that was always, I think, the most profound for everyone. So they go off, they'd have their homework, and they would have to eat mindfully that week. And most of them would come back, and most of them would not do it as much. And that in and of itself was awareness of how often that they didn't do the
yeah,
eating of mindfulness. But when they did do it, they might have just had one apple or bite or something like that. That was it. Like they might have even only done that once. And instead of just, again, being really unconscious with the food, you would feel the textures in your mouth. You would, the taste. So everything was like just more vivid and slower. Your digestive juices would, you could actually feel those starting to activate because you're so present with your food. So they would come back and they'd have these like almost like epiphany aha
hmm,
moments of how like completely unconscious they are when they're eating, right? And it was fascinating and it was like kind of exciting for them because again, it's free. We're always doing it.
yeah,
It doesn't take us any time. And I can't say like, I mean, 20 years later of practicing mindfulness, I'm not going to say that every single meal or every single bite of whatever I eat is mindful. However, what I will say is I went from like being that person that was eating on the run, standing up, like feeding your kids and doing all that stuff that was just like not present at all, to actually tasting my food and enjoying it.
hmm,
And it doesn't take any more time to do that here. It's just
yeah.
there's a
And
difference.
even
So
if it does take a little more time, it's well invested that
it
time.
is. Oh yeah, I think like I do a lot of health work with people now, and that in and of itself, like eating unconsciously and too fast, can actually cause like major digestive issues. Most people have really screwed up digestion right now,
Hmm.
so that in and of itself is really important. However, I share this because again, I think we get really defeated when you say you're going to quit sugar, and then there you are at 9 o'clock at night and you're grabbing the chocolate because you're tired, right? You've had a bad day, you've had a fight with somebody or whatever, and so we're in that state of unconscious reaction. So, another to me, doing the day-to-day stuff, like whether it's the things where you're brushing your teeth, all the things that you do automatically,
Hmm.
washing your dishes, whatever it is, that sets you up for when you're having a craving with sugar. All right. It gives you that ability to then what, is sort of called like kind of surfing the craving, right? You can be present with that craving. You can feel what's going on in your body. You can really even identify what emotions there. I mean, a lot of times it's tired or angry or frustration or whatever, because these addictions that we have are often just masking like a lot of discomfort in our
Exactly.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, totally. Because it's
Yeah.
all very well being mindful with food that tastes good or activities
Mm,
that either are positive or neutral. But it's another thing altogether to be mindful when you're feeling anxious and sad and stressed and lonely.
yeah.
It's like we don't want to sit in those feelings.
I actually have a lot of compassion for that, though. I mean, if you think about it, like what's worse, breaking your arm or feeling the feeling of shame?
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
There's a lot of pain in physical pain in breaking your arm. The worst feeling in the world is shame or guilt or depression or
Yeah,
like that like on the very low end. It's such a horrible feeling in our body. When you start to pay attention to those feelings, like I know. I mean, I had to learn how to have a capacity to actually just feel those feelings. They'll often, like, I hate to say it, but they can be so bad. They'll, like, if you have a lot of trauma, they can even make you feel like you want to throw up. Like they're powerful. They're the worst things in the world. So,
mm,
when we're not taught that as kids, we're not taught
exactly.
how to feel a feeling. So everything, especially now, especially today, has a capacity for, these extreme distractions from that. And so we're
Exactly.
very disconnected from our body. And I believe that's, in my opinion, is the root of all of these addictions is not the capacity to feel a feeling, right? And
Yeah,
that's hard.
it's hard.
It's a pretty, like, I used to coach people around really depression and anxiety. And so like a lot of them would come to me and they'd seen so many, well-meaning therapists and all these other things. And they struggled for a long time. And what I actually ended up helping them do, and I guess today we have words around it like somatic practices, where you're
Mhm.
actually holding that space for that person to feel the sensations of what that anxiety is in the body. And the key piece that I always tell them is the worst feeling in the world, the absolute worst feeling, you cannot hold it for 90 seconds. And that includes somebody who's having an absolute panic attack.
And when you say you cannot hold it, what do you
Nope.
mean? That it won't
It
last more
will
than 90 seconds?
not last. You cannot make it last
Ah,
more than 90 seconds. So, okay, so I'll just give you a framework of how this could look. All right. So you have somebody who struggles with anxiety. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like you're feeling peaceful, you're doing good. 10 is your absolute worst. Like that's like you don't want to touch that one. It's awful. So you ride that wave and you're feeling that feeling and you are able to connect to your body and connect to where does it feel. So for some people it might be right in their gut, right? You know, you have that really horrible feeling in their body, or maybe it's in their chest and they have sort of heart palpitations, or in their throat or in their back, like there's tension somewhere. So you find where that feeling actually locates in the body.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you bring, so this is where mindfulness comes in. You have that complete awareness and presence with that feeling. You don't leave it. You go right into it. So if it's in my chest, I'm going to bring all of my attention into my chest and I'm going to feel it. Okay. So let's say I'm at a 10 and I bring all of my attention into my chest and I feel it. Nobody makes it to 90 seconds. Like they just don't. It might move on them. Like maybe it tries to move into like a hip or a back or something, but then we go there and then we'll feel that feeling there and so on. I don't know. There's probably a name for that type of somatic practice now. But what is important is to understand that let's say you have something coming up. The only thing that can keep it going beyond 90 seconds is a story.
Hmm.
You're telling yourself a
Yeah.
story. There's a thought there. There's a belief there, right? So that capacity to be able to hold that presence and realize that it's not, it doesn't have any power. There's nobody that can hold a feeling at 10 beyond 90 seconds.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
And I mean, I often say that for a craving, it's usually just a few seconds, but it feels like we can't even deal with those few seconds
Absolutely.
without reaching for something to numb that feeling, that uncomfortable feeling. And, in my experience, that comes from what you were saying before. We've never been taught how to deal
No.
with basic human feelings.
No, absolutely not. I think it's the one thing that all of us here have a connection to, right?
Yeah.
None
And
of
so the
us know how
idea
to feel feelings. Yeah. Mhm.
how to feel feelings and the idea
Mhm.
of even holding space for an uncomfortable feeling for a few seconds, let alone
Mm.
89 seconds.
Yeah. And
You
I
know,
don't
it's
recommend that you start doing that. I really don't. That's why I say the practice of mindfulness actually builds the capacity,
yeah,
this the like kind of like a muscle, right? You're
yes,
you're training. You don't go out for the marathon, right? Like
right.
like like start with a little run, brush your teeth with some presents, have a shower, drive to work where you're actually like noticing. So again, think about like what you're practicing. You're learning how to not be in the drama and reacting to everything that arises
Yeah,
in our life.
yes.
So what you are doing is you're stepping back and you're able to be what I like to call is sort of the observer of your mind. You can step back and all of that feeling can happen. And you can have all whatever it is, but you're observing it. There's a capacity that each one of us all have, and that's what's not taught. That
Mhm.
we have this ability to almost like it's like watching a movie. Like, oh, here's this craving of sugar coming up. I can see that. I can watch that. And I don't get drawn into it, right?
Yeah.
That's where the practice leads you. And it takes some time and it's interesting. It's not something that, you're even striving for. It just naturally arises because I genuinely believe that our natural capacity is to be more responsive in life rather than reactive to our emotions.
Yeah. And to sit or stand or whatever, walk, drive
Mhm.
with an emotion that we consider to be uncomfortable. Again, I think it's fine when it's all happiness and marshmallows, no pun intended
Mm.
there either. But it's when things are uncomfortable that we will look for anything, sugar, for example, anything but the thing that can actually take away that discomfort, which is mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you one more tiny example, and it's specifically. So I do believe that there are sometimes, I'll say in my case, recently I had moved into a house with mold, and I developed an infection. So think parasites and candida that actually causes genuine sugar cravings because they're telling your brain that they want sugar, right?
Yes.
They can't survive without sugar. So there are genuine, like not emotions and not distractions. There's genuine feelings that can, that genuine like push. So I had that happening to me. So it was like nine, it was in the evening, it was 9 o'clock at night, and there I was, and all of a sudden, like I started noticing like I really, really was craving sugar, right? And it wasn't an emotion that I was even having to deal with. And I caved lots. I did. Like
Hmm.
because like it was very strong. It was really strong. And I was sick at that time with mold and I was tired and I didn't have that. And finally I just kind of stopped. I'm like, wait a minute. I know what I'm doing here. I'm feeding those little buggers, right? So mindfulness was actually everything to me in getting through that
Hmm.
because it genuinely was there. But even I will say, Netta, with that, like it did dissipate. When you can step back, become that observer, I watched it. I knew what was happening. I knew it was a physical, genuine physical craving. It wasn't me having a bad day, being upset with somebody or anything. It was like this dysbiosis in my body wanting to be fed. Well, I'm like, I don't want you in my body anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to feed you. And I had to really be present with the sensations of what that actually was. And it did switch. I just developed like other tools that I went to. Like it was very much there at 9 o'clock. And then it was like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. And I had other tools in my toolbox that I did to distract myself from that. I think it's important to understand that mindfulness was still key. Like, I mean, I was able to, again, walk through all of that with presence instead of crashing into just, being pulled by these infections that were in my body. Does
Yeah.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
It makes total sense. Makes total sense because, underneath all of that, whether it's your gut health or, something physical or something emotional that is causing the cravings, underneath all of that is I consider to be the skill, and we can learn a skill like we learn a
Yes.
language of of feeling our feelings and
Mm.
kind of, as you were saying, observing how we feel those feelings without adding another layer of shame or guilt or yeah, and
Story
anything
or
like that.
anything to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 100%. Because I think the cycle and the loop is when we start beating ourselves up, when we start going, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and I'm a failure and I can't do this. Like that's all stuff that we all think. It's easy, right? You cave on that. But the practice is and it's not it's more than sugar like it's going to be where you have an interaction maybe with your partner or your kid or something like that and instead of reacting to them you actually have a capacity to respond. It's a very different way to move through the world and I believe this is our natural state. I think the way we're living super unconsciously and just like reacting to all the stress in our life is unnatural to us. And we can see that it's making us sick. It's getting like struggling with all these addictions and so on. So it's just a matter of deciding like, do I want to live in that reactive state or do I choose to respond and be more conscious in my world? And
Yeah.
that's where the tools come in.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's kind of like ironic that before we get to the stage of even being aware that mindfulness is a thing and that can help, we need to be aware that we're not aware.
Yeah, that was like a huge aha moment. I had no concept whatsoever that I could question the monkey mind crazy circus show in my mind, right? Like
Mhm.
everything that went on in my mind, I believed. Like I was always in some kind of stress of something. And like again, I didn't have parents that had any kind of awareness to this. I didn't live in a community that had anything and there wasn't anything on the internet. Like I mean when I say that when I told people that I was so after Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, I ended up going to like it was like this 10-day silent retreat and everybody thought I was nuts. Like I flew off to sit with these monks and whatever. And it was like I was committed to rewiring my brain. And again, I don't think that people need to do that, but it's a fascinating thing
I
to be
bet.
able to observe your brain. And I was very severe. So it was something that was like I came back completely different and I've never gone into that unconscious place since that moment.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so to me, just even knowing, like, you say most people are on medication now for things like anxiety and depression, and they think that that's the tool. Oh, I have anxiety, this is my tool. That isn't the tool.
Mm.
Like, I believe that this other practices where we're learning how to like respond to life, how to deal with challenges
Mhm.
and work and understand our feelings. That's what we're here for. That's the game here.
For sure. I mean, I know for myself, medication helped me get to a point where I was strong enough to look for other options. But I
Mm,
still needed the medication to get there because the hole that I was in was too deep to claw myself out of without the
yeah.
medication. That was my experience at the time.
Yeah, I would say too. Like I was very, very severe. Like I said, I had been diagnosed with bipolar. Those medications didn't work for me, but I did, and again, I didn't know any different. So I did go on something and it numbed me to some degree where it gave me enough capacity. So I didn't actually go off of those until I was like after the silent retreat till I rewired my brain and I had all these tools under my belt and I had practice. That was when I ended up titrating off of the medication. So
Hmm.
again, I if that's a short-term tool, the challenge is that once somebody goes on that, if you go to a doctor, they're not even telling you that it is a short-term tool and they don't give you the tools to get out of that. So like your story where you're saying I needed something to help me, 100%. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what are the tools that we have to once you get into more of a baseline?
Right. Yeah.
To be able to do that. And that's where full catastrophe living was sort of my game.
What a
I'm
title.
like, I love that. I don't know. That really got me.
And so, if you had one piece of advice to give someone who feels that they're just too far gone, this is very nice for
Mm.
you, Angela, but for me, it won't work, what advice would you give them?
Oh, you know what? I totally understand that. I mean, that's a really natural thing to think. I think when we get into that, and I'm going to give advice, but I first want to say I think that's really common for all of us to think. We're just too far gone. So I mean, I was at a point where, like I said, I'd lost my job. I couldn't even get up in the day. I couldn't look after my kids. I couldn't do anything. So like there's nobody that went as severe where I was like flatlined. And I couldn't meditate. Like it was completely impossible for me to meditate. So what helped me was that somebody that I kind of came across had already been in that dark, dark space.
Hmm.
And I saw them on the other side of that. And all I needed was hope.
Hmm.
That's it. That's all I needed to know that else had walked the path and that it was possible. And that was it. That was the game changer. So if somebody's saying that, you know, I'm too far gone, you probably are feeling really horrible. And I
Hmm.
understand that. But why we're here sharing this is because we've all been there too. And from my heart to theirs, it's like there is a way out. That's it. Hope. If you can have hope and you know there's a possibility and there's someone else that's made it through that dark night of the soul, absolutely. So
Hmm.
that's what I would share is like as dark as it is, there is a way. And once you're open to the way, and that was the funny thing for me, is like I didn't know what that looked like.
Hmm.
And all I knew is that I was willing. That was it. I was willing. I
Yeah.
had hit such a like that's kind of the beautiful part about rock bottom is you got nowhere else to go, right?
True.
Like
True.
it's like the baseline. And I mean, I didn't make any changes until rock bottom.
Yeah.
So, there's a way out, and none of us come to these places of being in mindfulness and then teaching it for 15 years because, it was a nice thing to do. It's because we all hit rock bottom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so inspiring and so full of hope because we do tend to feel hopeless when we feel
Yeah.
like we've lost complete control of our cravings or anything else. And it's just great to hear your story and to see that these are tools, and I teach these tools. Mindfulness is one of them. The tools that we are at our disposal, we can learn to use, and they're
Absolutely.
effective
And they're free.
and
They're
they're
totally free.
free.
And you're doing all this stuff anyway, right? Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that is the key, is just to realize like our natural state isn't one of this suffering. We're going to have challenges in our life. And if we can step back from that and observe it without getting so like lost in the emotions and the stories of that, then there is the path out of that as well.
totally.
So,
Totally.
yeah.
Thank you, Angela.
You're so
Fantastic.
welcome. Yeah,
Wonderful. Thank you.
lovely to share. Thank you.
I love this conversation with Angela because most of us don't even know about the concept of mindfulness. I certainly didn't, let alone know how to actually apply it to our real life. So, as Angela was saying, start small. Pick one moment today, maybe while you're eating or even just making a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and bring your full attention to it. That is the beginning of mindfulness. And it's also exactly the type of guidance and support that you'll get in my Freedom from Cravings Formula program. One small, doable, practical step at a time. Because I created this program specifically for women over 50 to help you go deeper into your relationship with food, especially sugar, and also into your relationship with yourself. And so that you can get guidance and support to help you stop emotional eating, break free from sugar cravings, slim down, and feel more in control around food. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed so that you can live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly, feel confident in your food choices, and ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never have to feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. By the time you're 50 and over, you've spent decades looking after everybody else. And now it's your turn to take care of yourself. So let's chat about your specific needs and why you want to break free from cravings. You'll find the link to book a free video chat with me with this episode in the show notes. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.